All right. So the next module that we're going to cover is modeling revenue and cost drivers. Okay. And this is a logical segue from the industry module that we just covered. And we would cover corporate governance later. Okay. But yeah, we'll certainly cover that. All right. So now, but for in this video, let's talk about modeling revenue and cost drivers. All right. So allow me to open up a whiteboard. See, when you talk about a company, when you talk about modeling revenue for any like hospital, okay, there are two, at least for this kind of hospital, there are two sources of revenue. One is obviously the patients, okay, and the other is the medical college students. All right. So these are the two sources of revenue. Okay. Now, if we double click on patients, there are two types of patients. One is the inpatients, and the other is the outpatients. Right? Inpatients are those that are admitted in the hospital. Outpatients are those that are not admitted. Simple. Okay. Now let's look at some of the operational metrics that are reported for both inpatients and outpatients. All right. So then we will understand the drivers of revenue for both inpatients and outpatients, which are the subsources of revenue. So let's start with inpatients. So inpatient, the drivers of revenue are, say, bed occupancy as a percent of bed capacity. So it will tell you how many beds are occupied in a particular year. This times, okay, the average revenue per operating bed per day. So this is the daily revenue that you'll get. And then you go to multiply it by 365. So you'll get the annual revenue. Okay. So if a hospital has high occupancy, okay, then it will not go for bed capacity expansion right away. But if the hospital has low occupancy, then it will has to wait for a while to go for capacity expansion. Okay. All right. So this is one way of projecting out inpatient revenue, that you project out bed occupancy and bed capacity in the future. Okay. And these are, by the way, all these metrics are reported by like most of the hospitals. So there is another way in which you could project out revenue. So it is number of inpatients, okay, times average revenue per operating bed. So it's the same. So this is one metric which is common in both this one and the above methods. And then it's in number of inpatients times average revenue per operating bed per day times average length of stay of a patient. Yeah. All right. So this would give you the same, right? Sorry. Right. So again, a hospital kind of reports on all of these parameters, right? So it's up to our judgment as to how do we forecast these metrics in the future. All right. Quick comment: the average length of stay before we proceed with the drivers of revenue for outpatients. Okay. So average length of stay. So right now, Kauai is at around 4.1, 4.2 average length of stay per patient. Okay. Uh, but with new medical treatments, with new techniques, so average length of stay, should go down a little. But in fact, for large hospitals like Apollo, it's I think it's around 3.5. Okay, so we cannot really expect average length of stay to increase going forward. Okay, because of the more effective treatments that we can expect to take place in the hospital. All right, but the other parameters, yes, we could uh, take judgment calls and basis of reasonable assumptions, we can increase them in the future to project out inpatient revenue. All right. Now let's go to outpatients. Okay. Now, outpatients. Okay. All right. Now, outpatients, it's straightforward. The two metrics are reported as number of outpatients times revenue per outpatient. So a hospital would want both of these two metrics to rise over time, and that's how they would get more outpatient revenue. It's like as simple as that. And for medical students, again, it's the annual fees per student times the intake, the annual intake. Okay. And obviously, a hospital or a medical college would want both these two parameters to increase, but it's not that straightforward, right? Because it's very regulated. Now, NMC, that's the National Medical Council, last year, it came with a ruling that hospitals need to, private medical colleges need to provide a concession, or they need to have provide reduce their fees for a portion of their seats, right? So it's regulated. Okay. And the intake also, even if medical colleges they want to increase the intake, it needs to go through a process, with the authorities before they can actually uh, have an increased intake. All right. Okay. So this is about students. Now let me go back to the uh, uh, sheet. All right. Here, now let's talk about revenue from medical patients using the drivers that we just discussed. All right. And before we do that, I also want to show you, because it's important that we read through what the company has communicated. Okay. So let me share that. Okay. See, so Kowai is a small company. Okay. They don't have like quarterly earnings calls. What they have is annual general meeting. Okay. So I kind of pulled this annual general body meeting from their website. Okay. All right. Now, if you look at what their managing director is saying about new initiatives, about it, they don't really give any guidance around increasing the number of beds. Important guidance on the management, very important, because that would inform our view of modeling the sales, the revenue in the future years. All right. Okay. Now, with that understanding, let's let's again go back to our spreadsheet. Okay. Right. So I just pulled up to the industry sheet in this spreadsheet. Okay. And remember that we saw we saw a few metrics when we were discussing the industry in the previous module. Okay. And one of them was that the number of beds in India, number of beds per thousand people in India is around 1.3. Okay. And so total number of beds in India is around 18 lakh 50,000. Okay. And as per WHO, the ideal number of beds per thousand is around 3. Okay. So as per this estimate, okay, the incremental beds that India needs to have is around 24 lakh as per this number. Okay. All right. And this is my calculation. Then I looked up, I just did a Google search, and that's what I found, that this is, this is what some of the industry research is saying as well. Okay. Uh, now, okay. But see, Kowai is a regional hospital. Okay. It's based in the Congo region, and the Congo region has these cities and districts. Okay. It has Coimbatore, Tirupur, Erode, so on and so forth. And it has also like parts of uh, western, eastern Kerala as well, okay, which are there in the Congo region. So not only it serves Coimbatore, but it serves other places in and around Coimbatore. Okay, all right. And this is the population of all these cities and districts in the Congo region. So totally the population as of today is around 80 lakh. Okay. And if if these if these respective population they grow at these historical rates, and again take these numbers with a pinch of salt. Okay. But if they grow at these historical rates, then the population, 80 lakh population, in 5-6 years could be 90, 92 lakh. So it could increase by 10, 12 lakh. Okay. Over the next 5-6 years. Right. So I'm getting somewhere with this. All right. Now, so that's one. Just keep that in mind. We'll use that. Okay. The other is, see, all we are doing, we are trying to assess, we are trying to understand how do we like model future revenue for Kowai based upon the revenue drivers that we just saw and based upon some of this industry research. Okay. All right. So I'll try to combine everything together. All right. And then form a judgment. Okay. Now, if you look at the number of hospitals in Coimbatore, okay, there are many. Okay. And then look at the number of beds in each of these hospitals. So in Coimbatore, there are around 7,000 beds overall. Again, take these numbers with a pinch of salt. They may be slightly dated. Okay. All right. But mota at a high level, in Coimbatore, there are like 7,000 beds. Okay. And in Coimbatore, the population is what? 3 lakh, sorry, 30 lakh. Okay. And the number of beds is 7,000, out of which our Kowai KMCH, the number of beds that Kowai has like 31% of the beds in Coimbatore. Okay. Now, if you look at the number of beds per thousand population in Coimbatore, the math works around 2.3. So 2.3 beds per thousand population Coimbatore. How we did that? 7,000 divided by this 30 lakh divided by 1,000. So that's how we got to 2.3. Okay. WHO recommended average is 3. The overall blended average in India is 1.3. So Coimbatore has a higher penetration of beds. Okay. That's what this data is telling us. But this may be a little misleading because, as I said, these hospitals in Coimbatore, see, Coimbatore is a big city. It's a tier 2 city, but it's a big city, right? In the Congo region. Okay. So it not only serves people in Coimbatore, but people elsewhere in and around Coimbatore in the Congo region. Okay. So if we take a look at the entire number of beds in the entire Congo region, and data for that is really hard to find. Let's say the number of beds in Congo region, including the number of beds in Coimbatore, is say 10,000. Okay. All right. Then the number of beds per thousand population in the Congo region is 1.3. How we got there? 10,000 divided by the population, Congo population. Okay. From up here. All right. So this number is closer to the blended Indian average of 1.3 beds per thousand people. All right. Now, see, and you would think I took an assumption that, that number of beds in Congo region, including the ones in Coimbatore, is 10,000. I have no basis for this number. Honestly, I don't know if this is true. I'm not going to use this number as well. Idea is just going to walk you through the thought process. All right. All right. I'm going somewhere with this. All right. Now, if for a moment you assume 10,000 is actually the number of beds in Congo region, then this ratio of 1.3 beds per thousand people, this was reduced to 1.1 over time because the population would increase. And if in case we think that the beds won't increase, then this obviously ratio would increase, would reduce. All right. So if the number of beds were to increase, okay, so assuming 1.3 beds per 1,000 people needed 5-6 years down the line as well, okay, then the Congo region would need an additional like 250 beds or 240 beds per year over the next 5-6 years, okay, to accommodate the growing population. Okay, so what we are saying is if 1.3 beds per thousand people needed in the out years after 5-6 years, then this entire Congo region would need additional 250 beds or 240 beds every year. Totally like 1,500 beds over 6 years additionally. Okay. All right. Now, all of this math, okay, this incremental bed potential that we assessed in this entire region, okay, all of this math had this big assumption that we assume the number of beds in Congo region is 10,000. That is 3,000 more, okay, than the beds which are there in Coimbatore. Okay. Now, as I said, I don't have any basis for that incremental 3,000. So let's say the Congo region has twice the number of beds as Coimbatore. Okay. All right. And let me give you some, you know, uh, justification. And again, it may be way off the line. See, Coimbatore has 30 lakh population. So the population of Coimbatore is what? What portion of Coimbatore? So Coimbatore makes up around 38 or 40% of the entire Congo region's population. Okay. All right. And it has like 7,000 beds. That say this city with 40% population, with 40% population in this region. Okay. Don't you think it can, it can have 50% of the beds in that entire region? See, this is a major city. Okay. City with 40% population may have only 40% of the beds. That is the linear way of thinking. Okay. But since this is a major city in the Congo region, it would have more number of beds. So let's say it has 50% of the beds. And since the city has 7,000 beds, that's why the entire region may have like 14,000 beds. So that's the rationale. That's how I came up with for 14,000. And again, okay, I may be way too off. Okay. I'm just trying to explain a logic. Okay. As to how do you kind of think about these things when you are trying to ascertain the growth potential. Okay. All right. And please feel free to kind of use any like estimates that you want. Okay. This is just one of the thought processes. Okay. So let's say the beds in Congo region is like 14,000. Okay. So what we are saying is right now the number of beds per thousand in the Congo region is 1.8. So it's above the Indian blended average. Okay. So if this ratio needs to be maintained, if they have to have 1.8 beds per thousand people 5-6 years out, then Coimbatore or this Congo region needs to get around 2,000 more beds in by in 5-6 years to accommodate for the growing population. All right. So essentially around 340-350 beds per year more every year. Okay. All right. So, but this is for across all the hospitals and not just for KMCH, this incremental bed potential in the Congo region. So this entire exercise that we did with these assumptions, okay, what we arrived at is the incremental bed potential in the Congo region could be this. Let me highlight it with blue. Okay, all right. Now, okay, what portion of bed right now does Kuwait has? Okay, in the Congo region. So it is 15.71. So around 15-16%. Okay. So Kuwait makes up around 16% of the bed capacity in the Congo region. Again, I know, just take it with a pinch of salt. Okay. Let's say this percentage remains intact 5-6 years out. That is, Kuwait continues to have 15% market share in terms of the number of beds. Okay. So what we can do is C36. We're talking about incremental beds. So what we are saying is, okay, based upon the assumption that Congo region has 14,000 beds and the market share of, in terms of number of beds that Kuwait has is around 15-16%. Again, assuming that this market share remains constant for the next 5-6 years, then to accommodate for the growing population, okay, Kowai could actually get around 53 beds, incremental beds every year. Okay, so that is by the end of 5-6 years, it could have around 350 beds, 342 to be precise as per this rough maths. Okay. Now, so our output really is Hawaii. These are the incremental number of beds, incremental number of beds that Hawaii could get. See, again, this is because Kauai has not really communicated, has not really given any guidance in terms of number of beds that they should get. All right. And if they just had capacity, if you look at their operating ratios, okay, right now, look at this metric here. Let me highlight it. Okay. Right now they're at 55% capacity. Okay. So I really doubt that they're going to increase the number of beds until they reach optimal capacity. Okay. In fact, I also read through the report by a credit rating agency, which was released just like 10 days back. Okay, I'll pull that up as well. In fact, you should. So one point, you should also look at credit rating reports by credit rating agencies as well, because they also provide a lot of information. So in fact, let me also pull together the credit report from credit rating agency, which came out recently. Okay, let me go to screener. Yeah. So if you look at this operational performance, they talk about 55% occupancy. Okay? But in the main center, the occupancy is 78%. So that means the occupancy in the medical college is pretty low right now because it opened recently, and plus in the satellite centers is also pretty low. Okay, all right. So although we have that information, we can make an assumption, using the analysis that we did, that perhaps in the main center they may add some capacity if they have any space left. That is, okay. But that would be, piling assumptions over assumptions. So what I would do is, in the absence of any explicit guidance from the management, okay, I would assume uh, that at least for the next few years, okay, they would focus on increasing their overall uh, capacity utilization, overall occupancy, and not go on increasing the number of beds right away. Yeah. Because as it is, there's a lot of competition in Coimbatore. Okay, so if you looked at this industry, yeah, that's why it's very important to not just focus on Kauai, but some of the other hospitals that make up that region as well. So there is this Royal Care that came up recently, which is a hospital which is run by doctors which used to first work at KM at Kauai. Okay. Then there is PSG, which is a very popular hospital. There's Ramakrishna. There are a lot of hospitals. So there's a lot of competition. Okay. In the region that they operate in. Okay. So just by adding capacity in the main center, if they have space to that may or may not really result into tangible revenue. So that's why I'll rather stay conservative than be aggressive. So I'm assuming no like capacity expansion in my. So what it means is I'm assuming that Kowai is operating as a mature, stable firm. Okay. So there are like 5, 6 stages that a firm could be in. This is the corporate life cycle snippet that I pulled from Professor Swat Damodaran's class. Okay. All right. So my assumption is that Kowai is in this stage, mature, stable. Okay. And if the company is mature, stable, what it means is that the revenues are stable. Okay. And and yeah, so basically assuming no capacity expansion. All right. So, but and so what I'm going to do is I am going to give it a forecast period of 5 years. So I'm going to project out revenues for the next 5 years, assuming no like capacity expansion, okay, which may or may not be true. And again, being conservative. And after 5 years, I'm going to estimate terminal value. And yeah, the nuances of valuation, obviously, we'll discuss in detail in later modules. Yeah, but for now, we'll focus on projecting revenues for the next 5 years, right? And if you disagree with me, okay, what you could do is, and in fact, I would encourage you to do kind of pick up this company and value it using different modeling revenue assumptions. Okay, perhaps you could use the incremental number of beds that I estimate for Kowai. You could use it in your modeling. So if in case you want to use this, please do. If you want to, then you have to give it a higher growth period. Okay, I would assume 5 years. But if in case you are assuming capacity expansion that is going to add more number of beds, perhaps in the main center, okay, then you have to assume you don't have to restrict yourself to 5 years. Okay. Then essentially you would be assuming that the firm is a mature growth or perhaps even a high growth firm. Okay. And your forecast period should not be 5 years, should be 10 years. Okay. All right. Since I'm assuming that the firm has like peaked out, that's why I'm just giving it a window of 5 years before it reaches its terminal value. All right. So I'm staying conservative in the absence of any explicit guidance and not trying to use like assumptions over assumptions. All right. Okay. So now let's get to modeling of. All right. So this is the operational ratio sheet. So in this sheet, we have the revenue drivers, or rather the metrics that make revenue drivers, right? So there are if you recall, there are two sources of broad sources of revenue. One is the patients, and the other is the medical college. Okay, so patients, there are two kinds of patients: patient and outpatient. So now let's model the revenue from these patients. All right. So inpatient revenue. All right. So inpatient revenue, you would model uh, using bed capacity, okay, times occupancy. So basically, yeah, portion of beds which are occupied. That's what it means. And this times this would be average revenue per operating bed. All right. So this would give you the revenue uh, from uh, from all the beds for one day. Okay, and then you need to multiply it by 365. Okay. All right. So you don't have to. So basically, so you just have to project out these three parameters: bed capacity, occupancy, and AR POB. Okay. And then yeah, using them, you can back out the number of inpatients. Okay. All right. And even the uh, ALOS as well. All right. Okay. So let's do that. Okay. Let's use this formula. Mm, okay. So let me just first increase the sheet so that the formula is visible. Yeah, it is. Okay. All right. So we are assuming the same number of beds. Okay. Not assuming any capacity expansion unless it is explicitly communicated. Okay. And one thing more. So I said we will project revenue out for 5 years. There is an additional year 2024. That's because the results for F 2024, 524 are obviously not out yet because we are doing this in Jan. So still there are 2 months. Okay. What we do is we'll project out revenue for this year as well, and we'll tally it, we'll cross-check it with the half-yearly revenues that have been reported and see if we are in a close ballpark. Okay, all right. So now let's operational beds. Okay. So again, I'll assume slight increase. Okay. So let's say 2,000 beds are operational. Right. Now, we don't have to explicitly model the number of inpatients. Okay. Uh, we can back it out. All right. So but yeah, we need to modeling inpatient revenue. We need the occupancy, okay, that we saw, bed capacity times occupancy percentage. All right. So again, I'm going to make an assumption, okay, that the occupancy increases gradually. All right. Okay. And why does the occupancy increase gradually? Because it's driven by specialty centers, that they are the new medical treatments they have. So they'll have a larger footfall. Okay. And plus they have this medical college. And so slowly they'll have more patients coming in. Okay. All right. So let's assume 60%, and then I'll just assume a gradual increase. 68 and 70. Now, it's important that we document our rationale as to what led us to believe that the occupancy would rise gradually. All right. Okay. And I'm not like uh, assuming a say ridiculously high occupancy of say 80, 90, 95%. Because again, I want to be conservative. Otherwise, the revenues would blow out. Okay. And see, when I try to be conservative because I think when I value a company, I because if I find it undervalued, if I think the company can grow in the future, then I am ready to put my own money. Okay. So that's why I don't want to like uh, overestimate estimate or aggressively estimate it. All right. So that's the process. All right. Okay. So now let's document the reason, okay, as to why we think the occupancy was increased, albeit gradually. So this is my rationale. Okay, that there's a gradual increase. Okay, driven by new treatments, specialty centers, and lower cost medical college beds. All right. Now, and again, we don't have to project out ALOS, the average length of stay explicitly. Okay. So now let's project average revenue per operating bed. Okay. So average revenue per operating bed. Okay. Now, see what is happening is if you look at average revenue per operating bed, okay, it increased until 2021, and then it started dipping. Okay, now it has actually dipped a lot. That is because of the medical college, okay, which offers reduced reduced fee, reduced price treatments. Okay, right now. So what what will happen according to me is the revenue from the main center, okay, and also the satellite centers would keep on increasing slightly, but the revenue from the medical college beds, they may not increase as much because they are offered at a concession, right? So, right. So my rationale. So what I'm going to assume is first one thing. Let me also look at the historical rate. Okay. So the historical rate is is 4.4%. Okay. So I'm going to assume that the average revenue per operating bed grows at the same rate. Okay. And again, uh, the the main center beds and the satellite centers beds, the revenue from those beds may increase more than 4%. Okay. All right. But the revenue from the medical college beds may not increase that much because they are the beds there are offered at a concession to people. Okay. All right. So let me assume 4%, slightly lower. And I also looked up the ARPOB, average revenue per operating bed, increases at some of the larger hospitals like Apollo. Okay, so they report this metric for different regions because they are pan India hospital. So you would see for tier two, tier three cities, this ARPOB, this average revenue per operating bed hasn't really increased as much. Right, so that is also uh, one of the reasons behind me being not overly aggressive with in projecting out this metric for the future. Okay. All right. Okay. So now I think we have all the ingredients to model, calculate inpatient revenue. All right. So it's occupancy times an operational beds. So it's number of beds per average revenue per operating bed. Okay. So you have the daily revenue from all the beds, from all the operational beds, and then you multiply it by 365. Right? And obviously you got to divide it by, got to convert it into CR. Okay. Uh, Please, people, keep in mind that always pay special attention to the units, okay, that you are using. So this is CR. So that's why I usually, I had the rupees CR here just so that I don't lose sight of it. That just so I get reminded that this is in CR. Okay, right. So I would put it back. All right. So this is my inpatient revenue. Okay. All right. Now let's model the outpatient revenue. See, outpatient revenue, it's pretty simple. You have to kind of model. Uh, so it's basically number of outpatients times revenue from outpatient. Okay. So it's pretty like straightforward. Okay. So let's take a look at the historical growth rate for outpatients. Okay. So divided by it's 8.4%. All right. And again, so what I'll do is I would assume uh, that the growth is in line with history. Okay. See, with investment in new age technology across multiple medical disciplines, and so this hospital will continue to attract uh, patients. Okay. And again, the risk of repeating myself, given the medical college, okay, is now operational. Okay, so because of medical college, you'll have more, uh, you know, uh, people uh, flocking in. Okay, because it offers treatments at a reduced price. All right. Okay. So any which ways, let me assume slightly lower, like 8%. Okay. Okay. Let me lock this growth rate. And it. All right. Okay. And okay, and also let's document the reason why, just so that we don't forget. It's very important. Can document your assumptions or your thought process. Okay, just so that you could revisit it if things do not make sense, or if in case the company comes out with results, you always have to go back and tweak your assumptions, tweak your thought process. All right. So let's document the assumptions here. Okay. So here's my reason again, the risk of repeating myself. It's investment in new technology across multiple disciplines. Kowai will continue to attract patients, okay, and also because of the medical college, okay. And again, not like being overly crazy, not assuming overly crazy growth rate. Sorry, this translates to a CAGR of not like of 8%. Okay. See, there's a lot of competition in that area as well. Okay, so that's the reason why. Let's be conservative. All right. Okay. Now let's project this average revenue per outpatient. Okay. So average revenue per outpatient. Okay. So let's project how it has grown historically. Sorry. If I copy this, I should get the historical rate. Okay. 0.5%. All right. See, although I understand why there is a dip because of the medical college, there's a dip in average revenue per outpatient. Okay. But I think I would assume a higher average revenue per outpatient growth rate. Okay. Because see, uh, the the main center beds and the satellite center beds, they would continue to give you a higher revenue. All right. Although there'll be some offsetting done by medical college. Okay. But medical college beds are what like it are a small portion of the overall part of it. It's not a significant portion. So for average revenue for outpatient, okay, I will assume the same 4% that we assumed for average for inpatient revenue. That's average revenue per operating bed. All right. Now we have the ingredients needed to calculate outpatient revenue. So it is per patient revenue, okay, times the number of outpatients. Okay, and we have to convert it in CR. All right. So now we have modeled the outpatient revenue as well. All right. So now how do we now we have taken a few assumptions. So how do we like test, okay, that our assumptions are like are reasonable. Okay. So see, let's estimate, let's back out the number of inpatients. Okay. Using the some of the data points, some of the metrics that we have modeled out in the future. Okay. And then then we'll get a sense if our assumptions are reasonable or they are you know uh, or they are not grounded in reality. All right. Okay. So number of inpatients, we think about the number of patients, how you can estimate it is the revenue from inpatients, obviously convert it into rupees. Okay. And then divided it uh, by average length of stay times. I know we need to kind of assume an average length of stay first. All right. So let's for now, just sake of simplicity, let's assume a four average length of stay of 4 days. Okay. All right. Now let's estimate in the number of inpatients. All right. So inpatients, it's inpatients, inpatient revenue, converting it into rupees from CR, and then dividing it by average length of stay into times times average revenue per operating bed. All right. So this should give us the number of inpatients. Yes. All right. Let's drag it. Okay. And now let's see if our assumption is reasonable or it is crazy, right? So 18.46, this is pretty high, man. Looks pretty high. Okay. So this looks pretty high. So what I would do is, okay, number of inpatients. See, uh, it may or may not be high. Okay, but I don't want to assume double digit growth rates. Okay, given that they operate in a place where competition is intense. Okay, uh, so I would I would rather again let me lower, fine tune some of my assumptions. Okay, so occupancy, if I reduce the occupancy to say 57.5, okay, because they have not really reported H1 occupancy. Okay, obviously we'll have to revisit these assumptions when the actual numbers are out. Okay, okay, so if you see this number drops. Okay, uh, okay. In fact, average this could be in fact 4.1, 4.2, but this could be same as last time. Okay. All right. So yeah, this is pretty reasonable. In fact, okay. Sorry. Okay. It's pretty reasonable. Okay. And so let me linearly increase the occupancy. So it's 57.5. So it could be 60%, 62.5, 65%, okay, 67.5, and 70. All right. Okay. Okay. All right. So this is one of the ways you could always backtest the assumption. Then the other way is let's estimate average revenue per inpatient. Okay. So average revenue per inpatient would be the number of the revenue from inpatients divided by the number of inpatients. Okay. All right. So if you see the slight drip in revenue per inpatient in year 2024, and then there's a gradual increase. So all of this, so I'm not going to like over engineer this number. I think this is fine. Okay. So moving on to outpatient. So we've made a direct assumption on the average revenue per outpatient. So I think inpatient, so revenue modeling from patients is done. Okay. Now let's estimate the revenue from medical college. All right. So this was the fees, 67 CR, when it had its fourth batch running. Okay. So it had around 400 students. Okay. Uh, I think 600 students, right? Not 400. So let me divide this number. I think this might be wrong. No? Let me convert it into rupees and then 600. Okay. So this is the blended annual fees per student. Okay. When I say blended, I mean it's a combination of students' medical quota, uh, uh, NRI quota, and you have the management quota, okay, and then you have the government quota. So it's this a blended average. All right. So I would assume the same fees for the future years as well. And the reason why I'm not assuming any increase is because of MDC. Okay. All right. It's because National Medical Commission, they regulate fees for these private medical colleges. And in fact, last year there was a ruling that these private medical colleges, they're supposed to, they should reduce the fees for a portion of the seats. All right. And so this is the reason that I have documented here. Right. So now let's estimate. It's multiplied by 750, which would be the intake in year 5. And then we got to divide it by. So this is CR. So this is the peak. So the fees obviously would peak out. The revenue from medical colleges would peak out in year 2024. Okay. Unless, of course, they increase the intake of students. But again, that is subject to approvals and, or what have you. So again, I'm not going to assume an increase in intake because there has been no explicit guidance. All right. I think that's the word of the day. Lack of explicit guidance. All right. Okay. Now with all of this, let's model the P&L, the profit, the sales. Okay. So I switched over the P&L sheet. Okay. So we already have so here in healthcare, let me pull the inpatient sales from my operational ratio sheet. So the inpatient sales is this. Let me drag it. And let me pull the outpatient sales as well. This is this one. Okay. And let me drag it. Okay. And then this is the total healthcare sales. All right. Okay. Education. We also estimated the revenue from education, medical college. Okay. So let's drag it as well. Okay. So the revenue from operations is the healthcare revenue plus the education revenue. Okay. That's what it is. All right. Okay. So if you look at you just compute the growth rate. Okay. The growth rate is, let me see what's the growth rate. Is around 11.5%. It's around 12%. Okay. Right. And let's see what the growth rate was in the prior years. Okay. And in fact, all right, sorry, this should be 1/6. Okay. And let's see the growth rate in the prior years. So yeah, this is 9.5%. Five, yeah. It's 11.6%. All right, in the prior 5 years. In the next set of years, it's around 9.5% CAGR. Okay. So this is at least rhyming with history. Okay. It's not more, but it's not like significantly lower as well. Okay. All right. Other income is really the interest income. So we can model that out later. All right. Or perhaps just assume a constant other income. Okay. If we just want to keep a life, simple. So for now, let's just assume the same. See, one thing in modeling is we should never sweat over the small stuff. Ideally, we should be modeling it. Perhaps, no, I will model it perhaps later. Okay. But one golden rule is don't sweat the small stuff. Okay. Don't break your head over something which is uh, say 1% of or which is pretty small. Okay. So now total revenue is this. All right. Now, when we have modeled the revenue, now let's model the costs. Okay. All right. So now it's going to get interesting. Okay, we're going to model the costs. Okay. So for that, let's go to the financial ratio sheet. Okay. And guys, if in case you haven't watched the financial statement analysis video on the same company, please uh, pause this video right now or stop this video and go to that video and watch it, because then you'll get a sense of what these ratios are and why they moved a certain way, and what does it really imply. Okay, because I there is no point me repeating that stuff. Okay, so please watch that video, because I am just going to make assumptions based upon uh, you know about I'm just going to resume from where I left in that video. Right? Okay. Right. So COGS, again, so COGS, so P&L. So again, financial ratio, we have profitability, we have efficiency, we have solvency and return ratios. Okay. So right now in this module, let's just focus on the profitability, because let's see how far we can, to what extent we can complete the P&L. Obviously, we would not be able to complete the entire P&L because it has dependency on balance sheet. Okay. And also cash flow statement. Once we have the cash, you earn interest on that cash. All right. But we'll complete. So you get to know the linkage as we go along. Okay. All right. So for COGS, I gonna keep it very simple. Just assume the same uh, COGS, cost of goods sold. Okay. And again, I'm going to assume the same gross margin in the future. Okay. And again, in fact, I'm going to assume the same SG&A as well. Okay. And SG&A is the fixed or indirect cost. Okay. And I spoke a lot about it in the financial analysis video, and what it means for hospitals. It gives them a lot of operating leverage. All right. Okay. So now let's model so we have the cost of medicines, which is this is the direct cost, right? Yeah. So direct cost into, yeah. Let me just check. Just 1 second. Let me just check something. This is based on H4. Okay. Okay. Now, so this revenue from operations times the COGS. So this would give us cost of medicines and hospital consumable, direct costs. Okay. All right. And then we have employee benefit expense, their expense. So SG&A, it covers both these two line items. Okay. So so we already have the SG&A. So revenue from operations times. So we got the both employee benefit expense plus other expenses. So we have that. Okay. Now, yeah, we if you want, we can kind of break it up into two using the same ratio with which it was same distribution as history. Okay, we can do that. Okay, if you want to. Right. Now, finance cost. Okay. See, finance cost basically is interest cost. Okay. Not the interest income, the interest cost that they need to pay. They need to obviously pay an interest on the debt that they have taken on their books. All right. Okay. And again, if you've seen the financial statement analysis video, you would see that they have been pairing their debt over time. Okay. All right. From internal accruals. Okay. All right. So finance costs. Okay. So finance costs. So we already have the interest cost, right? So let's go to financial ratios. Yeah. So we have the interest. Sorry. So let's assume the same interest costs of 7.9%. In fact, I had checked. Kowai used to capitalize their interest cost. That's why it is lower. Okay. And if you remember, we had written that this is something why the interest costs are lower. And I had made a point that this is something that needs further investigation. So I did go and investigate and found that they had capitalized their interest cost, which is totally all right by accounting standards. Okay, it's not illegal. Okay, but I like companies which don't really capitalize, because otherwise you don't really get a true picture of the interest that they need to pay. All right. Okay. Okay. So now let's go back to the P&L, okay, and use this. So it's 7.9%. Okay. What do we multiply it with? Okay, we need to multiply it with debt, right? But we haven't really uh, modeled the future debt just yet, because balance sheet is not complete. Okay, so we cannot really. So you know what? Let's do. Let's uh let's just link uh the cell. Okay, and so once we put in the model the debt, this should flow through. All right. So what it means is this is linked with balance sheet debt. Okay. Just making these notes is helpful. Okay. So you kind of understand as to how the different statements they are linked together. Okay. Now again, same thing with depreciation. Okay. Now depreciation, uh, you again, this is an item which is linked with the balance sheet. Okay. And what with the balance sheet? This is linked with gross assets. Okay. So depreciation is based upon is paid on the gross assets. Okay. So until and unless we haven't modeled the gross assets in the future, we cannot estimate the depreciation and amortization expense. Okay. So, okay. So basically, what we need to do is we need to start modeling the balance sheet out in the future. Okay. All right. Only then these items will auto populate. Well, this would auto populate, but this obviously needs to be linked. Okay. So, but let me complete this total expense. The total expense is just summation of all these expenses. Okay. EBIT, interest, earnings before interest and tax is revenue from operations. Okay. And from that, you net off uh, COGS, unit of SG&A, can you net off depreciation and amortization expense, but you don't net off finance costs, okay? Because it is before interest. Okay? So I'm just going to drag it, okay? And then I'm going to drag profitability before tax as well. So which is really okay, which is really netting off total expense from revenue. Okay. So right now, obviously, this is not giving us the correct picture because these two items are missing. Okay. Uh, all right. Current tax. So the tax is rate is 25.42%. How? Tax divided by profit for tax, okay, which is very close with the actual corporate tax rate. So I'm going to assume the same tax rate. And so tax rate multiplies with profit before tax. And that's how you estimate tax. Okay. And again, this is an inflated number because the profit before tax would go down. Why would it go down? Once we model these two items here. So profit before tax will go down and then your tax would go down as well. So right now I'm just doing it so that the sheet kind of flows through once we're done, projecting the items in the other financial statements. Correct? Okay. And now the profit, uh, the profit after tax really is profit before tax minus tax. It's simple. Okay. All right. Okay. And then other comprehensive income is really the same. So, okay. So I am not going to worry about this other comprehensive income, which is like peanuts. Okay. So my total profit after taxes, this, and obviously, risk of repeating myself, this would be slightly lower. Okay. All right. When we are done with the other projection of other items. All right. Now So this I would not say this completes profit and loss, mo modeling, because there are other items that we need to model in the other sheets. But most of the linking part, except this item, is done. Okay. All right.